Sarah, what do you reckon?
I haven't got my glasses. I left my glasses on the bus, darling, remember?
Oh no, that old chestnut.
I love reading though.
Yeah, loving the quote voice, dude.
I can hear you just fine.
Dude, you sound more English than I do, man. Fully loving it. I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine, dude.
Okay.
Even though.
There. Okay. Great. So I'm just using this microphone here now. Okay. I'll figure out the other one later. So you guys can hear me now. I think the YouTube listeners should be able to hear me now. Okay, great. But with the inner eye, the spiritual eye, the mental eye, the emotional eye, sees as information. Oh, they say it's now there is sound but low volume. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. Let me see if it will find my regular mic now. There. Apply. Okay. How about now? How is the sound now? Sees as information which has not been properly, shall we say, understood or processed or utilized, and had to be put aside for the time being. And as now it's fine, they said. And as time proceeds in the spiritual seeker's journey, the shadow has an effect that may at times be disturbing or unnerving as it manifests in one's own life in a manner which is concerning, confusing, and which does not aid the spiritual path of seeing all as the one creator, to be served with love and light. The shadow side then has a kind of power that comes to the facet in one's being that can block certain perceptions and manifestations of one's own desire to positively polarize on the spiritual path. The shadow side then, if it can be recognized and utilized in a useful way, number one, having its existence mentioned, experienced, realized to the seeker by the seeker, then that power which it has to confuse, that power which it has to distort, that power which it has to cause difficulty in the spiritual seeking, may be utilized in a positive sense, so that that power accelerates one's knowledge of oneself and sees those facets of one's being that have accumulated through the years of living the life of the seeker, the previous to become a conscious seeker, utilized in a fashion which gives more knowledge to the conscious seeker of truth, of those portions of itself which may now be mined as a kind of gold or jewel that can magnify the journey of the seeker. This utilization of the shadow side, then, is a reunification of the totality of the beingness of the seeker of truth. Each seeker of truth, then, can do this. This is part of your spiritual path. This is what you have come to do, to unify all the portions of the one Creator that exists within you and without you, within your own beingness as you move forward in your spiritual journey of seeking. Thus, this is a great boon to the spiritual seeker of truth, for it is that which begins more and more fully to put together the puzzle pieces, shall we say, of one's being, of one's journey, of the very essence of the one infinite Creator that exists in all entities and all things at all times. We are aware now that there is a necessity for relating the shadow side to the negatively oriented entities that have their own shadow as a means of projecting themselves to the one infinite Creator, creation, as those who have the authority to separate and control others, separate others from themselves and control them. And for this beginning of the answering of your question, we will transfer this contact to the one known as Austin. We are those of Kuo. All right. So what do you guys think of that so far?
I think that voice is just awesome.
Thanks.
It's captivating.
It's great, dude. Start off with it was quite jarring. I was like, what the fuck? What's happened to Andre? But I settled into it, man. That was awesome.
Thanks.
You just change to that as your normal voice.
Well, it's just people, they're used to my regular voice, and they're like, why are you Scottish or why are you British? And, things like that.
Honestly, it's great. I could listen to that all day.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, when it comes to the whole shadow work thing, though,
Mm.
this fully agree with quote. It's like it's such an important part of the whole spiritual journey. Yeah, for me, it comes down to as much kind of taking responsibility for yourself. You know, like owning yourself, owning your own actions, knowing the bad parts about you, knowing what you've done wrong in your life, and instead of trying to hide it or trying to lie and like fool yourself into thinking you did the right thing. No, absolute brutal honesty. Tear those things out into the light and know them. You know, because all that carrying around all the guilt, all the shame, all the anger to yourself, all these things, they destroy you. They're as bad as anything else at all. Take it from me. That was the root of my whole depression and everything. After that period where I sorted all that stuff out in my head, I have been a far better, stronger person because of hugging my demons than from ever trying to fight them or hide from them or any of the other things that you consciously do.
Yeah, I agree, because it's kind of like when people aren't aware of what it is that they are thinking about, or like what is giving them their angst or other negative feelings, if they're in a state of just kind of repressing it and just like saying being workaholics or through addiction or whatever, trying to avoid their feelings, then they're not going to process it, and it's going to manifest as disease and things like that. And so it's really important to recognize these things. So recognition of the shadow here is the first point. The first step is harnessing the power of the shadow, is to acknowledge its existence. It's part of you that has grown alongside you, reflecting unprocessed or misunderstood aspects of your being. And I think, it's understanding that it is a projection as well. The shadow's power is it's far from being merely negative. The shadow holds potential to distort and confuse, but also illuminate and clarify. Its power, when understood and utilized positively, can propel the seeker forward on their spiritual journey. Integrating the shadow, the process of engaging with and integrating the shadow, is crucial for spiritual growth and transcending dualities. When you embrace the shadow, seekers move beyond dualities and closer to a state of unity. And this act of integration is a key part of realizing the interconnectedness of all things. It's a guide to self-knowledge, and it's part of the journey to unification and navigating challenges. And we're all traveling on this together. And, as you travel on this path, it will help you have compassion for other people who are struggling on this path, and that you can help guide them as well.
Can I also say that it also kind of, once you've been through it, it also kind of, I don't know whether anyone else has this. You do have, like, I have basically no judgment of people now. I tried to just, people are people. And I have no, I don't ever think that I'm better or worse because, I've fought my own demons. But it also annoys me when I see people doing the things the behaviors of the running away, the blaming somebody else, the victim complexes, all these things that that you need to take responsibility for, to move fast, to grow. So when I see friends that are clearly doing these same behaviors, like, do you remember my friend John that turned up for a week?
Yes.
He is the biggest example of this I can think of. Yeah, he puts up barriers seemingly in his own head to avoid taking responsibility for the things that he does. And that after you've been through the whole shadow work thing, you can't really do that because you beat yourself up so hard afterwards. It's worse. Whatever shadow turns up then after that point is worse than the ones that you've had in the past, because it wouldn't be there otherwise.
Right.
It's something that you can't fight, that you can't do anything about. And those ones destroy you. Even if you want to be honest, and you can't. But after you've been through that process, you don't want to make any more shadows. You've analysed the bits of behaviours in you that have caused you these problems, that have created the ones in the past.
You've learned your lesson.
Exactly. You don't want to make more.
Right.
But, like once you also know those bits of you that are dark, that aren't, but the reason they're dark, the reason they're scary, whatever else, is because they have power. Because if wielded properly in an ethical way, they may very well be your strongest points.
Right.
But you may never have learned the correct way of using them. For me, the other thing that I always think about when I did this is when I went through CBT, when I went through cognitive behavioral therapy, and I had to kind of analyze my thoughts and analyze my behavior and kind of balance the two, or find ways of breaking cognitive cycles to, all of that deep reflection of the self is basically the modern day psychiatric version of, this very kind of,
it's
relatively old spiritual practice.
Mindfulness, in some ways. And our YouTube Anders is saying, in A Course in Miracles, there is, as I understand it, only the voice of the ego or the Holy Spirit. So the ego is in ACIM 100% shadow, it seems to me. I'm not sure what ACIM means.
So when you look at the ego, once again, once you go through spiritual enlightenment,
Course in Miracles, okay.
Yeah, when you go through spiritual enlightenment experiences, then you once again, you realize how tiny the ego is, how it's just the little voice that runs things. It's not you. And you realize how much bigger you are than it. And then once again, when you're egotistical, when you think of yourself and this as more than the spirit that's encapsulating it, it feels wrong. It feels wrong. It feels physically wrong. Like this isn't. I know that's not me.
Right.
That's just the character. That's just the avatar. It's the voice in the head. It's not the guy listening.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they're very, very distinct. They're very, very clear, distinctive things, and knowing the difference between the two is once again part of the shadow work. The ego is the thing that will have the shadows. The spirit doesn't have the shadows.
Yeah.
But
and
so the ego will have that in there, but it's also, like Quo said, the thing that gives you the strength to move past, to move forwards, move through those things. So there's another bit in there, another thing Quo says about the ego at a point when he says that basically we have to understand the ego is just the kind of the tool that we have to understand the real world. The trick is that we believe that the ego is us, but it's not. It's just the tool we have for this incarnation to learn these lessons. To think that we are this, that's the first thing we have to step away from.
Well, you have to balance that, though, too, Ed, and make sure that you not only remember that that's a tool, but everything else is a tool, too. Our body is a tool.
Of course,
where we live is a tool. That's all
body's
tools.
Just a vessel, That's like the car that the ego drives while you, as the actual spirit, watches.
Right, but it's still a tool. I mean, it's all tool. Any distortion is a tool.
That's it.
If you look at it that way, it makes things a little bit easier, I guess, to understand.
And here Anders says, that's an interesting perspective, Ed, that the ego voice is tiny, but it seems loud when we identify with it, because then the ego is all that we hear.
It's all there is. And until you can understand that they're two different things and realize that the voice running in your head, the thoughts aren't you. Yeah, they're there as a framework so that you can do stuff.
And that's the mindfulness, is where you're observing your thoughts and not identifying with them.
That's it. Realize that when you hear those thoughts going through your head, who's the voice that's saying them? Because that's the ego.
Right.
The ears that hear them are the spirit. That's the best way I can think of describing it, because once you start seeing it that way, And it doesn't matter what you're thinking about stuff, whatever. That's just the ego nonsense. You are behind that, and it is beneath you. It is a small part of you. It's just your yellow ray expression. You know, like that's it. Other than that, sorry, dude, chat away, man. Just jump in.
I just wanted to read the next section here.
Sorry, man. Sorry.
Okay.
I do go on. I apologize.
All right. So we are Kuo, and we are now with this instrument. At this time, we would offer a disclaimer or caution to the seeker who is contemplating how to relate to the negative polarity as one who identifies with the positive polarity within your third density illusion, as has been referenced in your query for this session. It is very common within your illusion that pain and difficulty and trauma, all those things that serve as the catalyst for growth and self-reflection, are caused by other human behavior. Your other selves who are attempting as you to find bearing within an illusion in which the veil of forgetting has caused immense confusion and lack of natural apprehension of your own nature and the nature of those about you. Because of this limited perception, we caution the seeker against attempting to view a particular individual as being purely of the negative polarity. For while it is not necessarily impossible that you as a positive seeker would come into direct contact or direct interaction with such an individual, it is quite a nearly impossible thing to judge and to discern from your veiled state the true polarity of another individual, because to discern the polarity of an individual would require a knowledge and awareness of that individual's intentions and their own self-conceptualization. You would have to be sure that this individual is acting from a place of conscious co-creation in their activities and how they relate to others, that whatever action or activity has caused you to question their polarity would come not from a place of pain or confusion, but from a place of cold wisdom and pure love of self. Yeah, and that's a great point, because we can't know another person's intentions in this density, since we can't know anything for sure. All we have to do is decide on whether we're going to use service to self path of fear, anger, control, or service to others path of forgiveness, love, and acceptance for all beings. All right. We find that it is much more common that you, as seekers within the third density, particularly upon your planetary sphere, come into contact with the effects of the systems influenced by such individuals. But such individuals themselves are relatively rare, and what you might judge as being of service to self is indeed an artifact of those activities and not the activities themselves, that being the confusion and the pain instigated within your illusion that the negative polarity attempts to stir up or create in order to utilize and to take advantage of this lack of cohesion and lack of apprehension of the light of the Creator. And that's a good point.
Could we stop right there? And that last paragraph.
Yep.
Could we discuss that for a second?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I think that's a very good analogy, because the vast majority of people on Earth are lost in the mire and the muck and the confusion of the illusion, and they're taking it at face value, and they're like, oh, peace is war, war is peace, peace is genocide. They're so confused, and they're in so much pain, and they're like, we need to have war so that we can have peace, and then they're in pain, and it leads them to do things that could seem service to self, like promoting war, but the reality is they're just lost and confused, and they have no idea what's going on.
Right, yeah, so like, think about things like, say the Masons, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You could say that the Masons are a good charitable organization that do lots and lots of good work.
Mm-hmm.
You could, from a conspiracy theories point of view, say that they are, the instigators of a system of service to self, crushing, control. that is the point of their institution. So the individual Mason that goes into that place is probably somebody who's trying to do something good. They're trying to do it in a service to others way. We can't judge them as being service to self for being a Mason. They might be really nice. They might be the most incredible Freemason, charitable person, whatever. But the institution that they're working for would be run by negative and service to self entities. So anything we would view in them being negative would be an artifact of the people they work for and the system they work inside of.
So it's basically like
people themselves might be perfectly fine, might be very service to others. But
kind of like what like in our governmental systems, almost any governmental system is set up as a service to self thing.
100%.
You know, that's it. It's the whole point of it is to control and manipulate. That's the whole purpose of the government's there for. It's supposed to be decided what control by us, but you know how that works. So, anything that, like, say, when I see or hear something on the news and I go, well, what shit show did we start now, with something going on or whatever? It's not my choice to do that specific thing, but I just happen to fucking live here and this is where I'm from. So that's, it does. You get looked at that way. And
that's a really good point, though, dude. That's a really good point. Could you say that all Americans are service to self because of the actions of American foreign policy?
Yeah, right.
Could every single person in the world then turn around and say, they're American, they're service to self?
Yeah.
You're not. The individual is service to other. But us viewing them would view them as,
right.
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah.
Oh, what are those assholes doing now? I could just imagine, being because that's why I like being in a group like this, because you guys are all over. You're not, there's what, Andre, you're in Canada. Ed, you're in England. You guys got Trevor.
Dude.
Trevor's in Tasmania.
To be fair, I actually live in the Republic of Edland.
There you go.
Yeah. So, yeah, I wanted to mention that they're not necessarily service to others, like the regular tier Freemasons. They may actually, like I said, the vast majority of people are not polarized. They're some of them might be leaning towards it. It's possible, and it's impossible for us to tell, unfortunately. But from the Confederation material and stuff, the majority of people, and from my personal experience of interacting with people, they're just trying to work their 9 to 5, get to the end of the day, and do what they're told. And when people are in the state of doing what they're told, they're actually not polarizing, and they're just part of the illusion. And so they're not... they're neither service to self nor service to others in that state.
NPCs!
They're NPCs, yes. They're what people would call NPCs. But they have the opportunity at any point to decide to activate their heart and start going service to others, or they could decide to close their heart and open their third eye and go service to self. And then also I wanted to mention Anders, our YouTube viewer, says, I now come to think of how service to others in the Law of One is similar to the Holy Spirit in A Course in Miracles, and the ego in A Course in Miracles is similar to service to self. I don't know if you guys had any reflections on that before we move on.
It's not a bad point. Really, the idea of the ego is that it is the self, really, as we know it. So service to self would just be enslavement to ego. That would make perfect sense.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because they're, like, I was conversing with someone, and they were complaining to me about a person who had a lot of service to self behavior, where they were very callous and hurting a lot of people, but they were saying, "Oh, I'm doing everything for God," and I was and she was asking me like, "How can this be for God?" And I was explaining, well, they're listening to their number one, which is themselves, their ego, as you would call it. Though the Confederation stays away from the ego word because it's kind of like for some reason they don't like it.
Well, like I said earlier, like, you know, quote says that it's important. We should have an ego. We need
Yes,
to know
exactly.
what it is.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and so
because we need to be more
never
balanced.
be slagged off.
Yeah.
It should just be kept under control,
Mhm.
and know what it is: mind, body, spirit.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
it is just the mind part.
Exactly.
It's not the whole.
Yes. All right. Is it all right if I continue, guys? All right. Great. This.
Oh, wait a second.
Okay.
Sorry, dude. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one more thing. This also brings up the psychopath test thing.
Psychopath?
You know? The psychopath test. You know, the fact that basically
like
everyone that is in real positions of power all over the world, most government officials, you know, most surgeons, most like business, you know, high-end bankers, everyone in the military, they're all psychotic, and they will all fail the psychopath test. You know, it's just there's two ways of doing it. You either go complete, you know, service to self crazy, yeah, and you know, own it, or you go service to self like a normal person, and you just take control of people another way. You know, so that's what he says about you. We're all under the control of these people, the systems that they make.
Well, the hierarchies.
The hierarchies, but we will probably never meet them.
Right.
So, you know, that's what he said earlier on. So I was just going to bring that up. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, go.
Yeah, they're the people that design the system for their benefit. Like, I think a public figure that I believe is probably service to self is Bill Gates. You know, he has all the characteristic traits. He has an endless hoarding desire. He always wants more money and more land and more power, and those are all the characteristic traits of a service to self individual. And he seems to, you know, like, if you believe in the conspiracies, he's doing a lot of hurting of other people for his own benefit and making money off of it. All right, so let's continue. This is an important aspect of our response to this query, for in attempting to grapple with the aspect of your shadow that is truly represented by the opposite polarity, you must typically do such work in the abstract and in understanding and attempting to comprehend how this polarity works. And you may witness some things that reflect this nature about you, but attempting to apply this label directly is typically ill-advised. Your question centers around this aspect of the shadow. In order to explore this dynamic, we can turn to the very fundamental aspect of creation, as you might perceive it, in that in order for there to be a reality at all for you to experience as an aspect of the Creator, there must be some form of dynamic tension. You can observe this fundamental law alive within the laws of your physics, as your scientists comprehend it. That very nature of your material reality is based upon various movers and moved, various tensions between two poles, forces at play that pull upon objects that create this dynamic between subject and object in order for the material of your illusion to even come alive. This is also true of your metaphysical reality, where, in order for there to be a system of illusion that allows for the Creator to experience itself, there must be some kind of dynamic tension, a subject and an object, two poles along a polarity in which tensions can be created, a relationship can be formed. This manifests in many different ways, but it has its origins within the very beginnings of your octave, as the harvest of the previous octave, the polarity of the mover and the moved. That's interesting. They talked about the harvest of the previous.
Yeah, dude, he's talking about previous octave.
Yeah.
What?
The mover and the moved. Interesting.
We need to go back. We need to go back through this previous octave stuff. Okay, because I always like to think of the octaves as basically like the incarnations of God, right? You know, So what did God learn last incarnation?
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
what was carried over is his pre-incarnated biases from last time that are influencing our universe this time. What moved was moved.
What? Yeah. So I think there was the mover and the moved. So the mover, I guess, would be the service to self person, and the moved would be the service to others people in the previous octave.
Well, I don't know.
Moved by
It talked
compassion.
about things. It talked about things kind of like from a kind of real baseline. There, it took from like basically like we always talk about the panpsychism thing. You know, like the red, you know, first density. Yeah, is atoms talking to one another. Is you know, these nexuses of energy having positive and negative, you know, polarities, and having charges that they choose consciously to pass that information and make those connections between a positive and a negative to create a polarity inside the matter that makes the universe what it is. Yeah, that same scaling up process of positive, negative, attractive, repulsive forces working off one another scales all the way up to everything. Scales up to how galaxies work, and it works perfectly as an analogy for how consciousness works inside human, you know, civilization, inside the animal that we are, the pacts we create. Loving this one. This is really good channeling.
And
but what did he bring over from last octave? What was the move that was moved?
I don't know. Maybe we'll hear more about it as we go on.
Let's go. I want to know.
Oh, here, I just, YouTube, Anders says, Ken Wilbur says, as I understand it, that the ego should be included and transcended, and that's the integral view, is similar to Carl Jung's individuation process.
100%. And personally, I'd say that until you've done that, you're always going to struggle to move from yellow ray to green ray expression. Because like, all of the stuff that you're talking about in there is yellow ray issues. Every single one of them.
The ego,
all of the Jung analysis, the shadow, every single part of it. And once you've done the shadow work, then that was the first time I ever got my solar chakra glowing. Like it opened up like a sun in my chest. And once that happened, the heart chakra, it just filled up with energy, and the whole thing it just exploded. I don't know how you could get that to happen without doing the process.
All right. So we'll get back to reading this. You can reflect upon this harvest of the previous octave and witness how it might be alive in almost all relationships, and how your consciousness is able to even move and have an experience within your illusion. And it is within this environment of tension and dynamic that the nature of the polarity of your third density becomes relevant. As you pointed out within your query, the positive polarity lacked a certain ability to create momentum and generate the type of metaphysical gravity and inertia that allowed for the experience of the creator to manifest in a meaningful way prior to the veil of forgetting, that allowed for the manifestation of the service to self polarity. Once this veil of forgetting was instigated and implemented, the dynamic of service to others became much more potent because of the dynamic of service to self became a realized reality in that entities were able to view the self as individual, as separate, and with that view they were able to relate to the creation in a new and unique way. Those upon the positive path also were blessed with this view of the individual self, and thus were able to relate to the creation in their own unique individual way. And this is where what we have called the choice was born, because the seeker, the mind-body-spirit complex alive within the third density, was able to view the self, as an individual, as an agent within a creation that was other than the self. This mind-body-spirit complex could then make a true choice of true free will, of how to relate to the creation about them. This was not possible in an essential sense prior to the veiling, for this relationship to the creation about one flowed so naturally from the knowledge of self as creator and the oneness of self with creation that it was inconceivable, for the most part, that one could have a relationship with the creation in which one could relate in a way that saw the self as separate and saw the self as having one's own right and ability to relate from one's own sovereign crown and throne as a creator. It is with the advent of this possibility that the confusion of third density became relevant to both polarities. In your question, you have pointed out that this very valuable resource that we have called the shadow, and that you have called the shadow, becomes available to the third density entity through the manifestation of the actions of others, and how they may create pain and behave in ways that one does not approve of, that one prefers not to view as a behavior that the self is capable of, that one prefers not to acknowledge exists within the self as an entity who desires to share love and to create a positive, comfortable, and joyous creation. It becomes difficult to view activities of others which are counter to this desire, but the gift of the shadow, as we have spoken, comes from the ability to choose for the self how one wishes to relate to the creation while still acknowledging and accepting that the self contains all things and that you are the creator in all of its manifestation, that no matter what your view, no matter what activity is before you, what aspect of the creation you witness, you contain that aspect within you as the creator. There is nothing that you can view or experience or witness another experience that you yourself are not capable of experiencing and of performing or acting upon the creation. The nature of the choice in polarity is that you, as the mind-body-spirit complex, attempting to gather experience for the Creator, reduce your experience upon one of these pathways. And so it is natural that you attempt to act according to your desire and according to your choice. But it is that nature of the positive polarity that love is shared universally and unconditionally. And so, when you are challenged by something that you witness, though you may not conceive of yourself as behaving in such a way or creating such conditions, it is an intentional challenge or catalyst generated by that experience that causes you to exercise your muscle of love, of unconditional forgiveness and acceptance, and understanding that this too is the Creator. This too contains the love of the Creator, and this is an aspect of your very being. The very depths of your being contains that which you are having difficulty witnessing and integrating. We have described how this dynamic allows for the self upon the path of service to others to come to a deeper relationship with the very being as their Creator, and it is through this process that you come closer and closer to a relationship with the pure service to self polarity in the process of grappling with the behaviors and activities and circumstances about you. Coming to a conscious process of utilizing the catalyst in order to open your heart and discover yourself as the Creator in a deeper and deeper sense, you come closer and closer to a crystallized expression of service to others. And this crystallized expression of service to others allows you to discern with greater clarity a crystallized understanding of the service to self-polarity. This is an extremely advanced and difficult course of experience within the third density, which is not necessarily an intended path for each seeker within the third density to walk, for it is adequate within the third density to come.
I'm loving it. Like, even the Scottish, that was good.
Yeah, to modicum of an open heart that is instigated by simply processing the catalyst of pain and confusion. But for an adept who wishes to step even further, there will come into contact with a deeper understanding of the actual mechanics of service to self and how those activities may manifest. This is a perception of wisdom and becomes a much longer process for the adept than the initial utilization of catalyst of pain and confusion to begin to conceive of a pure crystallized expression of the Creator that does not cause pain and confusion out of one's own pain and confusion, but rather has discovered those aspects of the creation and of reality and has found joy within them and has found personal purpose within them, and then attempts to consciously and purposely utilize them for their own gain and their own power. This creates greater challenge for the entity upon the path of service to others, for it is even more difficult for the positive seeker to conceive of the Creator, of an aspect of the Creator, having a conscious awareness of the self in the other self as the Creator, yet still inflicting such circumstances upon another self in an attempt to control simply for the reason that this negative seeker has found purpose within this way of relating to the creation. It's a great challenge to... All right. You guys want to chat about what we've read so far? It's been quite a bit.
There's quite a lot there.
Yeah.
That sounded like I don't know, like a full-on justification for why it's okay to be service to self.
Yes, because you're connecting with the divine within yourself, and
Which has been said before.
And you're finding joy.
What's the whole thing about like right at the end, the ultimate service to self entity has absorbed all of the other smaller self entities, and then it's just like them. And then they realize that in all of their love for self, they've still only ever really loved the Creator, because they are just a fraction of Creator. And then suddenly all negative polarity falls apart, because service to self is still service to other, because you can never get away from serving Creator. Doesn't matter whether you're serving self or whether you're serving other.
Mm-hmm.
You're always serving Creator. So there is no negative or a positive negative away from Creator. Everything is Creator.
Mm-hmm.
It's only negative or positive until you get to the Creator part. When it's to each other, when we're viewing ourselves as separate instead of being one, that's when you have the negative and positive. That's what it looks like to me. Once it goes back to the Creator, then it neutralizes it. There is no positive or negative.
But it doesn't matter whether you are positive or negative. You're both still Creator.
That's where it goes. Yeah. All roads lead to Rome.
As they say. Yeah, another aspect of it is that it was talking about how the veil is what has allowed us to see ourselves as separate from the creation. Because it was simply not possible to do that when you were fully conscious of the fact that you are the one infinite Creator, and everyone else.
I like the bit it said there in about it was the first time ever that someone could imagine themselves on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
What a great idea! Do you know what I mean? Before that, every single being in the universe knew that they were only a tiny fraction of.
Mm-hmm.
The veil and the ego allowed people to imagine themselves to be far bigger, without the knowledge of how tiny they were.
Yeah. And I think that part of this, the Kuo message and the law of one in general, is to learn to forgive and love even the service to self people and the lost people, because there really can be no exceptions. Like, it can't be an us versus them dichotomy. It has to be unconditional love for all beings. And so it really helps with that understanding.
See the Creator in all things, right? Not just the things you like.
Yes, exactly. Because I think that's where the the pain and the suffering from the confusion comes in is when people are like, I don't like that, so that shouldn't exist, or because
the creators should be all loving. Why are horrible things happening to me?
right, exactly. And, and so
the pain's created too.
And then from that pain, because they're like, oh, I got hurt, so I'm going to hurt someone else. That is kind of where it comes from. That I think that it might seem service to self to someone else, but what they're really doing is that they have some catalyst and they didn't know how to process it, and now they're just passing it on to you. Or passing it on to someone else. It's unprocessed catalyst. And they're saying, okay, how are you going to interact with this catalyst? That person punched me. I'm going to punch you. I'm going to see
They're
what
giving
you
you a present.
Exactly.
You're passing the catalyst around. Spreading it about. Everyone gets to get a bit of this catalyst. It's all working out.
Exactly.
See, I don't know about you guys, but when bad stuff happens to me, or has happened to me, it's generally always made me kind of not want to do it to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Whether it's like an empathy thing or but I don't really understand why that cycles of abuse thing would happens. What causes that? When bad things happen to me, I want to protect people from those bad things ever happening to them.
And that's
why would in people's heads does that then think that they need to perpetuate that?
Ed, I might be able to shed some light on that. See, my reaction from my memory when something really bad happens to me, and it's not just a by chance thing, but it's actually somebody did something or said something, whatever, that's negative. I always felt bad and guilty, but I felt bad because I knew they had something happen to themselves and they were just projecting it on me. Still made me feel like shit, but I always kind of understood that in the back of my mind. When my dad would throw nut fits and destroy stuff and throw shit, and it was all you could do to get the hell out of his way, when he was going crazy and doing shit, crazy stuff. I always knew there was a reason for it that had nothing to do with me or my brother or any of us, whatever. But I think a lot of people do not do that. Mm-hmm. Just from talking to people, I think most people probably don't do that. I'm just weird, I guess.
Well,
but I think you might view it the same way. You might have.
I do, dude. That's exactly it. I put myself in other people's positions.
But most
the people that I'm angry at, or the people where
there's a lot of people
to view things from their point of view,
and do the opposite.
Yeah.
Everything is woe is me. It's all targeted at me, and I don't know what psychologist. Maybe it was Jordan Peterson. Somebody, clinical psychologist, was saying that when you're out in the public and everything, 99% of the people around you are not paying any attention to you. Hardly ever.
Yep.
Unless you're doing something extravagant like, walking around in a giant Indian headdress and strumming a drum or something. Yeah, you might get some attention, but 99% of the time, nobody's even gives a shit. They're just doing their own thing. They're in their own world. They got their own problems, their own family, their own work, everything. So, and he explained it a certain way one time, and it just is really, it's jarring, but it's also relieving at the same time. Because when you have empathy like that, Ed, it puts a lot of guilt and shame on you because you're picking up on a lot of shit of people around you, and you're not knowing how to process it, and you're not knowing that you have something you need to, understand. Hey, this isn't you. This is just affecting you and alerting you. It's not you per se.
Dude, there's lots and lots and lots of reasons why I live in a shack. Just saying.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was going to finish my statement was that so that the lost people, they kind of pass it on, but the service to self would like totally control the situation and be like, how dare you punch me, or like they would like totally turn that person into a slave, but then a service to others person would forgive and love them unconditionally and be like, oh, I see your pain. Oh, did you get hurt before? Is that why you're hurting me? And then they would like, extend with compassion and love like you guys are extending and help them heal. And so that would be kind of the more service to others approach of responding to that catalyst.
See, I find whenever I'm in any kind of conflict, my main thing is I want to know why there's a conflict. What is sort out here to stop the conflict? Because it like Crow says, it's a case of confusion, of the distortion of us not understanding what we're communicating about, or some emotional difference that we don't understand, we can't communicate clearly, so it comes to confrontation. But most of the time, I'm just trying to kind of make sure things are fair, or make sure things are like, why should there needs to be an argument? This happened, and then that happened. Why is this? It all comes down to kind of, I don't know, trying to make things sorted again. I think a lot of people don't know, like, I don't know whether that's a standard thing for, like, how you respond to those things. Does that make sense? Like in a way that it isn't trying to kind of like, because there's this whole thing about the middle pillar as well. Like if you're too good and too, service to others, then essentially you are free to get tramped all over and allow evil to trample over whatever. So there has to be a certain line where you stand up and you do the Jupiter thing and you protect and you help in a way that's polarized towards positive action, but in a aggressive sense, in a non forgiveness sense, if that makes sense. There has to be a line where that is superseded to stop negative action, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, there isn't any kind of stopping to negative polarity, is there? If there's no good guys to stand against the bad guys, who stops the bad guys?
Would some of that be balanced by the influence of the negative? What did they say in the first quote we were talking about? The negative encapsulation that you have no control over, like say the country you live in or something.
Yeah, probably. But there still has to be that line. We're here to learn the lessons of love, to see the creator in all things, and to open our heart chakra and learn acceptance and connection to everything. Balance our karma. Like move to a point where we're ready to ascend to be creator. Yeah, in the next level of our densities. That's where we should be aiming. But the world we live in isn't set for that, is it? That, like you said, the negative stress and focus on. Sorry, I missed that. I didn't read it all.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, it was just Anders from YouTube says, that's a good point, Fred. The ego perspective is focused on oneself and not so much on others, other than how they affect oneself. Yeah, for sure. As the service to self person doesn't really care about everybody else because they're subhuman. Only number one matters. Only the self matters. And Anders also said, I think the law of one, somewhere it says, ultimately all services to the creator. That makes sense because there is only the one. So, in fact, they are serving the infinite creator by serving at least themselves. Whereas service to others are serving the creator by serving other people. But the people that are lost and confused in between aren't necessarily serving the creator as much because they're just so confused. The creator has a hard time getting them to do what the creator wants. So, like for a service to others person, how would the creator get them to do something? They would have someone come up to the person that service to others and ask them for something. And then the service to others person would respond by doing that. Whereas with the service to self person, how does God control them? He gives them a feeling or a thought of, oh, you want to do this, I want to do this, and then they will do it because they will follow whatever ego or whatever you'd like to call it, whatever feelings they have inside. They're going to follow those and they're going to pursue those, and they're going to make them happen. And so that way God can control both the service to self and the service to others. They're kind of like soldiers or whatever you could say. They follow the orders properly and well, whereas the people that are confused may not.
Dude, you just did the whole kind of the Danny Dyer thing about Yoda and Darth Vader, and he's like, like with the dark side, and with Darth Vader, he wants to control outer space, but Yoda, he wants to control inner space.
Right. So it's kind of like that, but it's kind of the opposite. I like to tell people that Star Wars, there's nobody service to others in that show. They are all either confused or service to self. There's no one there that's being kind or loving or compassionate or forgiving or accepting. So that's not even in there. But but a service to self person would actually be doing, I guess, with the Yoda thing, where they would be, listening to themselves within and doing whatever they feel they want to do, and accomplishing that in the external world. Whereas the service to others
but then,
person,
like you said, if it comes down to the voice that you hear inside your head,
yeah,
if you believe the ego, and God communicates via that ego, and then you go and do the crazy shit, then then you're basically a channel for that negative creator, right? Whereas if you do, service to self, if you were to service to others, then that same thoughts coming into your head, would they be channeled by a creator to be positive thoughts? Because then would it actually be your choice one way or the other?
So I think the choice,
or does it come down to what you're built to be is what you channel?
I think it's your polarization in that, right? So it's kind of like okay, so you get a thought in your head, and if you're on the service to self path, you're going to use fear, anger, and control to get what you want. And then whereas if you're service to others and you get a negative thought, you're going to use forgiveness, love, and acceptance to help heal that.
Okay. So I totally agree with you. This ties in with that book. What is it? The three magic words, where he says about how basically we've all got the same subconscious. Our subconscious mind is one unified, connective force that connects all of us. So realistically, the same thought could be given to either a service to self or service to the other person. And then free will and choice and how the ego is being utilized, is what will lead to their reaction to that thought, whether it be service to self or service to other. Would that be a better way of
I'm going to let Fred answer.
This is kind of how I viewed it from if you look at this is easy to explain to somebody who a Christian, somebody who goes to a Christian church or whatever, or has a Christian belief system. If you look at two separate texts in the Bible, thou shalt not kill and love thy neighbor as thyself. Which one is positive? Which one is negative? They're the same message.
Well, I mean, the not is what makes it negative, right?
Exactly, pretty much. It's telling you don't do this. It's putting fear and control. Same message. You shouldn't kill people. I mean, you could say it a lot nicer, but don't kill people, don't hurt people, and love thy neighbor as thyself. That's Jesus' way of saying, be nice to each other. Just, that would be implied. Don't kill each other. Yeah. If you're being nice, you're not going to kill somebody. It's the same message, but one was filtered through someone that was service to self.
Well,
one was filtered through someone who was service to others. Pretty, similar message though. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My understanding actually was that what happened was that Moses simply didn't test the spirits. He didn't understand enough to test the spirits. He was service to others, but he got confused because he was like, oh, whatever voice I hear in my head, that must be God. But he didn't know that he needed to test the spirits and be like, are you from God? Are you service to others? He didn't do the Shema, the Lord is one or whatever, to the spirits that he was talking to make sure they were from the infinite creator.
See, so the way I understood it was that he took advantage of like a meteorite shower that was completely destroying ancient Egypt, and he went in and he robbed up all of the Egyptian artifacts, disappeared into the desert, chased by the big Pharaoh army, took advantage of a meteor strike in the Dead Sea to get his people across, and it was basically the biggest heist in history, and none of the Jewish artifacts actually come from like the Ark of the Covenant and all of that. They're all actual Egyptian artifacts that he just stole and ran off into the desert with, and they, that's basically what started everything.
Well, actually, Ed, it was my understanding that after the plagues were brought, the Pharaoh gave them a whole bunch of treasure and gold and artifacts and told them to leave to get the hell out of there and kicked them out.
Yeah, that would be what he'd say, wouldn't it? Yeah, that is exactly how he'd say it. If you look at the Egyptian scribes of the same time, they all say they robbed it.
Well, I mean, in the eyes of those people, they probably felt robbed. Wouldn't you?
Well, the Egyptians, they just had like their whole fucking empire.
These people just brought all this shit show on us, and now
random Jews run off with all their treasure. Yeah, I'd be pissed off.
Well, all right. We've only got a half an hour left, and we've got more than half of this to read. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to continue.
Please carry on.
Okay. This creates greater challenge for the entity upon the path of service to others, for it is even more difficult for the positive seeker to conceive of the Creator, of an aspect of the Creator having a conscious awareness of the self and the other self as the Creator, and yet still inflicting such circumstances upon other self in an attempt to control simply for the reason that this negative seeker has found purpose within this way of relating to the creation. It is a great challenge to come to an understanding of this and an acceptance of this. We find that it is very common for the positive seeker who is able to offer forgiveness and acceptance and love upon the grounds of other selves manifesting their pain and confusion in ways that affect others simply needing to be healed. And if that healing takes place, they would cease that behavior. But for the other self who acts without this wounding and does so intentionally is a much tougher pill to swallow, you might say. And it is the challenge that the true gift of the negative polarity and its manifestation as a shadow of the positive polarity is offered. It is a higher hurdle, a heavier weight to lift, and allows the seeker of the positive polarity to have an even greater contrast of their own conscious choice in how to relate to the creation, so that they come to a deeper and deeper understanding of the self that does not rely upon the notion that others act unconsciously when they cause harm and pain. We understand the difficulty of this, so Okay, we understand the difficulties, and we reiterate and emphasize that it is not expected of you, as the seeker within the third density, to discover within yourself a pure acceptance of all things that you encounter and all circumstances. The very intention of the density that you find yourself in is to provide those challenges. If you were not challenged, you would not need to experience this density. The very purpose of your manifestation and incarnation within this specific experience relies upon the notion that you find it difficult, but that you rise to the challenge and attempt in any way to meet that difficulty with an open heart is admirable, beyond that you can conceive. From our point of view, outside of the veil of third density, it is one of the most beautiful manifestations of the Creator that we can witness for the seeker in third density, to attempt, even in the face of failure, to continue opening the heart and accept all things. To realize the self and all other selves and all of the creation as the one infinite Creator is indeed the access, the pure beauty of the Creator itself. Our hearts are with you in this challenge, and we offer ourselves in whatever way we can as you attempt to discover this light within the darkness of the veil of third density. This time we'll transfer to the one known as Gary. All right, so basically the gist was, keep trying to forgive and love all beings, even though it is difficult and it is meant to be a challenge.
Yeah, that whole kind of like that one there, that kind of, I think, kind of brought it back to kind of the warrior's path thing, that was said before. The whole kind of, when you realise that the world's just a big con, and you feel like you need to do something about it, Like it says in there that you're not expected to instantly accept these things, and the fact that it's hard, and the fact that how can you forgive these atrocities, but moving past those things and moving to a place where you realise why these things exist, why they're there, and that your place is in some way a higher picture, a higher position than the silly acts that these people want to do to one another. And then it comes to a point of acceptance for what they are, without I suppose loving, I suppose is the right, I don't know the right way of saying it, but you know what I'm saying, like without there being any kind of, I don't know, thinking it's cool, I don't know,
repercussions.
Yeah, just kind of like becoming the mirror,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with third density we have the veil, and like I like that point where they were saying that if it wasn't difficult we wouldn't be here. Like the whole point is that we are challenged and we find it difficult to forgive and to love and to be kind. And they are saying that from their perspective, it is really beautiful when, even though we're struggling on our knees, but we still open our hearts with love and kindness, and we still try to forgive and love and to be kind.
Hey, I don't know about you guys, but I do.
You do what?
I do try to do that.
Yeah.
Do you guys try to do that too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's our whole purpose of being here, right? So, because we're service to others, wanderers, or whatever.
Well, I just want to kind of get my soul straight after all the crazy shit from last time.
Oh, right, from the last incarnation. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to work it out. I'm trying to piece it all together, man. At the minute, that seems like the point. I need to get over the biases and recognize the parts of me. I've been reading a lot of the what's his name, Ernest L. Norman stuff. The guy that done the Voices of Venus and the Voices of Eros and that.
Mm-hmm.
And Lars Jung, what he talks about is how like you have to recognize these vibrational patterns and the resonance that we produce with kind of certain motions. And Raz talks about it as well, like like that when you feel something, you're putting out a certain vibrational energy, and by doing that, you actually like crystals, you connect, you create sympathetic resonance to other things of the same vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're stressed out, if you're like holding on to these negative things, then that vibration is you're going to connect and sympathetically resonate with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you get past those things, think about higher, better things, forgive, accept, move on, then you resonate with other things, higher things, connect to other better stuff.
Yeah. On that point, well, let's continue. We're those of the principle of Kuo, and once again we continue our sharing of thoughts on this interesting subject, with the caveat and request, as ever, that our thoughts serve as points of embarkation for your own consideration and contemplation. For whatever our perspective, we cannot walk the path for any. Only you, in the full subjectiveness of your awareness, can determine what is true and not true, and what use to make of information. We would not supplant your authority and the primacy of your inner processes. The material which we examine today is relevant in one way or another for most spiritual paths upon your planet, that is to say, for those who have consciously taken up the answering of the call of the Creator to seek and to become one, to step outside of the unconscious and the blind, repetitive patterns of the strictly yellow-ray world, in order to begin moving upward into the consideration and the exploration of what love is. Love as a principle, love as a philosophy, love as a concept, love most particularly and poignantly as lived, as applied, as embodied. It is one thing to be on the other side in the classroom studying the patterns of the universe, the ways of the incarnation, the possibilities that entities exercise in relating to one another, and to see how it is all a projected manifestation of the one Creator, and to see that always the solution, so to speak, the balance lies in opening the heart to the primal frequency of love, which begins to dissolve the illusions of separation. But within the incarnation, one does not enjoy that broadness of view or depth of awareness that one has so easily on the other side. In the incarnation, you are in the thick of it. The stakes are high, the consequences great, the meaning amplified to its maximum. Whether it be the physical life and the death of the self, the integrity or structure of functioning of the mind or the energetic self, the things which one seeks to accomplish or to protect, or other outcomes the self seeks to avoid or pursue, the total being within the incarnation is committed to the play and has in most cases become the play. There is a lack of awareness of the curtains, much less that which spreads outwards into foreverness behind the curtains. Endless confusion results, endless misunderstandings and misapprehension, not as a single act, but as an act that cascades, one misunderstanding begetting another, misunderstanding begetting another, misunderstanding within the self, between selves, and between groups, as it rolls forward and creates an ambience or environment within which the self operates of misunderstanding. Assumptions are made about the nature of reality that become threads of programming for individuals and societies that sink down into the roots and become the mythos or mythological substrata of the functioning of that society, such that it becomes the invisible walls of reality that restrict the point perception into a certain pre-given container, creating yet more wonderful opportunity for misunderstanding to pile on top of or distort further the deeper foundational misunderstandings. Pain and suffering are inevitable in this environment, as we have described it, for the self misunderstands most fundamentally its own self, and develops a disharmony within the self, and relates to others unknowingly, inadvertently, in this disharmony, relating to this disharmony within the other self, indeed two selves, 3, 4, and more, orbiting the dancing around in a way in which love is not central, but the entanglement and the machination projections of the imbalanced and blocked lower rays, which are themselves a manifestation of this environment of misunderstanding, become central. And in this disharmonious relationship are relationships imbalanced in dynamics of power, love, and wisdom. There's the perennial puzzle of the third density, illusory experience of understanding whose distortions are whose. This question is evident in most seekers' lives, particularly and especially those that are of an intimate nature, where two selves operate so closely together as in your marriage, that each provides triggering catalyst one to the other, precipitating reaction, narrative, and perception, that it becomes a challenge to untangle who is doing what to whom, whose responsibility it is that one or the other or both or more are in pain or suffering or displeased or unhappy, and the projection in this circumstance can run wild and free. The self, as the biblical saying goes, which is not coming readily to this instrument mind, but perhaps may be added subsequently, blames the other self for that which is being generated within the self. This points to an aspect of the working of this dynamic which you have called projection in your group question, whereby the self is ascribing their own internally and self-generated reality as happening or being sourced outside of the self. It is not the self which is responsible for its reality in this condition of projection, but rather the other self. So, like, you made me feel this way, for example. Examining this particular dynamic, we see that there is a lack of conscious acknowledgement, much less acceptance of the true source of the self's catalyst. Thus the self is caught in the hall of mirrors, thinking it is looking upon other faces and not recognizing that it is, in its blocked and imbalanced energetic system, seeing its own face, or we should say, seeing places where it is blocking and misunderstanding and imbalancing the love and light of the one creator, operating not from the green and blue rays, which may see other selves more clearly as they are, but operating instead out of a blockage or a set or complex of blockages or imbalances. This connects to why we of the Confederation have described other selves as your mirrors. This is quite literally the case that your relationships reflect back to you the fruit of your own beingness, the quality and state of your work or non-work in consciousness, that which you do not acknowledge or accept within yourself, which is not to say that all work is completely internal, for two or more selves in relationship are exercising free will in one way or another, having impact on other selves, contributing to individual and group outcomes in the work of clear communication, and finding the love within the moment, whether that is expressed as compassion or empathy or forgiveness or understanding, is worthwhile and called for. This projection of things unconscious, of things unaccepted within the self, creates not just a division or even fragmentation within the complex and variety of constituents, unintegrated components of the self, but within the societal mind, the collective or group mind as well. The collective exerts a shadow and projection, whether they are seen in groups, relating to groups, or internal workings in any given group. There is a mass psychic geographical areas, you may say, of aspects of the societal body that have gone untended, unacknowledged. One can see this in the way that nation-states relate to one another, compete, and find intolerance and even bellicosity between them. Those of the negative polarity may seek exactly those qualities within the shadow, these qualities which are projected and unintegrated. There's a psychic field and gravity there in that shadow, fed by the pain and those energies that start as love but are the fruit of the result of love distorted, be they jealousy, envy, possessiveness, dominance, or its partner, powerlessness, hatred, enmity, and so forth. These energies, not brought into the heart, can take upon a psychic life of their own in the health of the group and create myriad opportunities for not only further confusion, but the use of embodiment as such energies by the clever and willful friends of the negative polarity, those who not only live within the shadow and the projected images, but those who seek to make use of this material that they may exploit others for the gain of the self. One might see the path of negative polarity as the shadow come alive, as the shadow unintelligently organized and controlled, shaped from chaos or randomness or flux and instability into a disciplined, coherent tool and purpose. The negative polarity has a relationship with its own shadow, first and foremost, and seeks opposite of the positive polarity's attempt to love and accept and bring all things into the heart, to exclude it and all aspects of the creation from the heart of the self, to close down the full operation of the heart, that these energies may be controlled by the negative polarity, that it may be untroubled by that which those of the positive polarity may call the conscience, the empathy, and the otherwise interfere and preclude the harmful exploitative treatment of others. This shadow within which the negative polarity operates is described as such also because it is not a realm of transparency. The entity pursuing the negative arts seeks to cloak, obscure, and misrepresent the true intention as best as possible. They wish not to be known by the other self except insofar as they wish to be known as the entity on top of the power pile, they to whom fealty is owed, and they who may exercise in their wildest dreams unlimited and total power over the free will of other selves. Alright, wanted to pause, say hi to Ashley. Hey. And then here, I think this is a poignant example here. The shadow within which the negative polarity operates is described as such because it is not the realm of transparency. The entity pursues the negative arts, seeks to cloak, obscure, and misrepresent the true intention as best as possible. They wish not to be known by the other self except insofar as they wish to be known as the entity on top of the power pile, they to whom fealty is owed, who may exercise in their wildest dreams unlimited and total power over the free will of other selves. And you know, that just, the number one person that brings to my mind is Zelensky, you know? Because he's just like, he wants everyone's money, he wants all the weapons, and he wants to kill as many people, his own people, as he wants. It's just like hundreds of thousands have already died. And then he's obscuring it. He's like, oh, only 31,000 have died, and we care. It's like, but just like robbing them off the streets. It's so, anyways. All right, I think there's just a little... Oh, there's quite a bit. Did you guys want to discuss what we went so far, or I'll continue? Okay, I'll continue. From the perspective of the positive polarity, this offers a potent and wide-ranging field of reflection upon a shared planetary sphere. The negative polarity rises out of the shadow, that planetary group. So in the ways of the negative polarity, in the ways of those presumed to be pursuing the dark path of separation, the positive polarity has abundant material to see its own self, not just as the individual self, but the group self. In a world such as yours, there are a great many shadows afoot, as yours are a people which have not, as we have said, made efficient use of their catalysts, which is to say, have remained largely unconscious and unself-reflective. Thus there is much which is unprocessed, which is repressed or cast out of the awareness, and which sinks down into the deeper layers and is carried forward from generation to generation in the mass mind. And as we have spoken previously in this circle, it is indeed one of the most challenging, if not utterly agonizing, aspects of third density life for the soul who seeks to operate with an open heart sensitive to suffering, to see the workings of those who would embrace, embody, and exploit the shadow. This instrument has been recently confounded by the notion of sadism, as he had been reading the caste system endemic and traveling back to the roots of your own country in the system of American slavery, and in reading and attempting to see from the perspective of those who suffered at the hands of those you called Nazis. What this instrument has been found greatly troubling and difficult to understand is the willful brutality of those of your planet who are capable of inflicting upon other innocents, shall we say, not just capable, but of seeming pleasure, and that people derive from hurting others, whether they be in pain and unconscious, or whether they be of the negative polarity, that polarity that began in pain but developed that pain into intentional weapons, and how such could even be possible, much less pursued. Despite his breadth of philosophical study and the scope of conceptualization of a universe that can adequately make room for a shadow and a negative polarity, still there's great cognitive, emotional difficulty in coming to terms with the harm of others when it is encountered. We find this is true for nearly all positively oriented seekers, and thus is one of the great virtues and problems, you might say, of the third density experience. This attempt to come to terms, to not judge that which one finds abhorrent or not understandable, but to expand the identity outward. You might see it as be more like the Creator in accepting the unacceptable, in seeing those of the negative polarity and presuming the purpose of this hypothetical that they can be identified as such within an illusion where there is a that is a problematic exercise, accepting these two as brothers, as sisters, as self, and not other than, that you and they, vast though the difference may seem to be in your chosen behaviors, are indeed all the same one being. Ultimately, that those of the negative polarity do with this consciousness is, as we have spoken previously, within the circumference of the self's own possibilities. It is impossible to look squarely and directly at the harm caused by the negative polarity, to look at those perpetuating such energies within the shadow, and see that the self too, under different circumstances, under the circumstances that the negative entity has walked, could also have pursued or made those decisions. Not, of course, within the present subjective awareness within this which the self operates, but the nexus which is your present moment and has been arrived at the result of the walking a path that has included countless inputs and decisions. You of the positive polarity have used your catalyst to choose in a certain direction, a slight shift somewhere along the line, deep in your past as the choice was being formulated, could have produced a different trajectory. A few more ounces of suffering could have caused the travel in a different direction. One can also develop a compassion for those of the negative polarity, for that which in their quenchless thirst for more and more power and dominance they sacrifice, that being the companionship, community, mutual support, joy, and song, and the dance that are inherent and innate to the positive polarity. It's true, it's a big sacrifice. The extreme isolation and imprisonment of the self into the false and separate self is one which is a viable path forward, and which does bring with it great power, but it is one which is miserable, you might say. Whereas the suffering weighs heavy upon the heart and shoulders and minds of those of the positive polarity, there is ever the possibility of harmony within the self and within other selves, and indeed, as much as you, the positive entity, may find chapters or periods or nightly recurrences of this harmony, you also know and seek and enjoy harmony and the expansion of being and the joy and the mirth of that harmony. This has become unavailable to your negative brethren, not as a result of cruel imposition or circumstance, but as a function of that which they have rejected and cast out of their heart. I think Zelensky is also a great example of this, because he has cut off everyone who brought him to power and put them in jail. In a way, you could perceive those of this polarity, though, not within their conscious scope of intention, but in the larger picture, ultimately, of offering a great service, as if an aspect of the Creator itself has said, I will take upon this eternal disharmony, that we may grow and learn together, that I, as the Creator, may know more completely about myself. Those of the negative polarity seek and benefit only and for themselves and no other. But in the larger blueprint of the universe, is this a benefit to all that is offered? But in closing, we empathize with you, our friends, to share a world where, in addition to the vast spectrum of suffering caused by the sheer confusion and unconsciously projected pain, there are those who seek intentionally to inflict this pain, who gain pleasure from inflicting this pain, and who serve behind the scenes often, sometimes in front, promulgating thought which perpetuates this condition. It is inherently painful, and while your philosophy may give you perspective and open the opportunity for some measure of peace and understanding, the pain is unlikely to go away. But that pain is informative and supported by your philosophy and your study, and you can make use of this, not to blindly and reactively go to war with the shadow or those of the negative polarity in order to rid the scourge from your planet, but to engage in those studies, as we have spoken of here, primarily the study of self, which is far, far more then your conscious identity and personality shell within which you operate at the present moment, but is that all self, which includes those of the negative polarity who give reflection back to the positive entity of its own shadow, individually and collectively. All right. So, guys, what'd you think of that?
It definitely makes sense. I feel like we touched on this a little bit in another session, although I can't remember which Law of One session, but one of them that I was in, we touched on this concept of, oh yes, during the Q&A with Trish and Gary and Austin, Seattle Law of One group, that session where I believe it was Elaine was saying that, well, it didn't start off with Elaine, but someone else was saying, it was a couple, I forget their names, they were older, that sometimes it's hard for them to have this kind of connection to those who are on the world stage right now and doing service to self actions, causing division and getting everybody outraged for their own agendas, and that they sometimes they wanted to know whether it was kind of a violation to do meditations and energy work related to putting positive thoughts, forcing positive thoughts into their heads, or forcing this concept of make them change, make them positive. And we got into that discussion about, even though it's not our cup of tea polarity wise, it's not what we would do, it's not what we think is normal or right, it is their free will choice to be as they are. And then we were also talking about how it's, no matter what it looks like on the outside, they're still our other selves. What is within them is within us. Even if it's the thief, the murderer, the rapist, we're still each other's other self. So there's no, I mean, that's really hard to grasp. And Elaine was saying how she imagines those that like are of a different polarity and are doing things that we would say are negative. She imagines them in like a compassionate form, like she'll see them as children or something harmless, and that helps her to summon that love and compassion from a place of positivity rather than, okay, I'm trying to force them to be good or some other thing. So this was kind of pinging back to that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree, and I know many women really like that baby analogy. It works very well for them. I don't know. It doesn't work for me as much.
Yeah, I don't use the baby analogy,
Okay.
but for some people, I think for Elaine, that's what she uses. Like they're all kids in a room, all of the so-called big bads. I don't need to use a specific imagery. I feel like that stunts the purpose for me catalytically if I imagine them as something else. So I perceive them as they are, but I perceive also the other side of what they are, which is love, light, love. And so I understand that we're all, going on our own road, and this is their path and this is mine. And they're showing me a mirror of what I am not. And I am showing them a mirror of what they aren't. So it balances itself out. That's this, just the nature of this density. There's going to be that friction between one side and another so that we can polarize and, have the ability to do work. We need your positive, your protons and your electrons. You need your positive, negative charge. to create. That's how it works.
Yeah. Earlier in this session that we were reading, they were talking about that necessity for that tension. The mover and the moved apparently was the previous octave. And then in this particular passage, what I found resonated with me was, we can have empathy or sympathy for them because they have a miserable existence where they're all alone and they have no one to confide in or to celebrate with because they're a service to self. They're whereas us as service to others people, we have these people that we're serving and that are grateful to us, and that and then we're grateful to them, and we just have this reciprocity of love and of kindness, and it's just such a beautiful thing of working together that way.
It is. It is. It makes me feel bad for those who are service to self in this really intense, negatively polarized way, because it is just them, and they've cut out their heart. They've completely bypassed it, and that's sad. I can't even muster the anger. I can't even muster the, go back in time. I could, for sure. But now it's more like, I feel bad for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Totally
whenever you're ready, come on over. I've got a hug for you.
Yeah. Come over to the service to other side. Open your heart.
Yeah.
Let's all be kind to one another. We can all enjoy this beautiful creation. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. Ed, or Fred.
Can I just say,
ahead.
when you're talking about this negatively polarized, we haven't mentioned the hidden hand yet. Like when you take that into account, really, we should be thanking all the negatively polarized things, or the really horrible people that are trying to do horrible things to us. We should be thanking them. Thank you for making Earth difficulty level 100. Yeah, we play like the computer game on the hardcore settings here. That's how Earth rolls.
Yeah, this is. Yeah.
Thank you for creating the best, simulated learning zone ever. Bad guys. Really, if you believe the hidden hand, all of this has just been set up by Lucifer to make it the most hardcore way of doing things possible. So yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks. The pain and suffering really helps. Cheers.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I mean, we wouldn't have any reference. It's just how it has to be, and somebody has to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apparently he's going to get really kind of after the next third density round where he runs things, he's going to get back up to his 6th level. He struck a deal. These things work in the higher ups. But
Oh, you mean to turn over to the service to other side?
Well, yeah, but he's essentially Lucifer's doing this as a service to others act.
Oh, you mean like halal? Oh, yes.
It does end up being that way, yes. Although don't say that to them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar so much with the hidden hand, but I know.
Oh, dude, seriously, it's like the law of one written by the service to other guys.
Service to self.
Service to self guys.
Yes.
Sorry. Jesus, I'm dyslexia. But so everything's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. None of it contradicts any part of the raw material. He uses the same dialogue, the same. Every single part of it is exactly the same. But it's basically the plan of why Earth is so hardcore. What they've been doing the whole way through to manipulate it this way. And basically he describes himself as another six density social memory complex, just like Ra. And this is his act of balancing karma, giving us choice.
Right. Yeah. It's for the it's kind of like the way I remember it, that there was a channeling by Pamela Arlan of Halal, which is the entity that provides the veil. Apparently there's like an entity that provides the veil, and it is a service to others thing, just like Ed says, to allow people to believe that there is someone other than themselves.
Yes, in the Toltec wisdom, it's called the mitote, which is the smoky mirror, and it's the veil of illusion and all its various forms that gives us this thought that we're disconnected from ourselves, our true selves, from what is, the nature of reality, as well as the polarities that we're faced with.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean the same thing. When you really look back, this is one of the things I love about the Law of One. It lays out like the framework. Yeah, and then you can go back and you can look at every single different ancient religion, every single religious book ever written, the Bible, all of them. They all tell the same story that's in the framework of the Law of One. There's small fragments of it, little truths and bits that are in there that in every single one of them. And this whole idea of there being a veil, that there being like what the Rosicrucians call the firmament, and you break through the dome and you can see the stars and the
Oh yeah.
angels on the other side. These things are repeated over and over again through all of the ancient wisdoms, really. So when we're now looking at the actual kind of the physics of how this thing is all put together, that's what I love about the Law of One. You can look at how every single ancient religion did it, and you can find out the hows they did it
Hmm.
in the Law of One. There's so much still untapped stuff. I was talking the other day. Oh, no, it can be off topic. I don't want to sway too
Well,
much, but yeah, don't
yeah.
worry, it's all good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh well, we're about 10 minutes past. So, did you want to read the last 2 paragraphs, Ashley?
Sure.
Okay.
I am Ko, and once again with this instrument, we would thank each instrument at this time for giving a dedicated period of their experience in this illusion to sharing more of the philosophy of the unity of all things, all people, and all paths of seeking to the one infinite creator. We have been honored this afternoon to be able to share with you the concepts that each has within the shadow, the negative thoughts, the confusions, the joy, the beauty, the purity of the one infinite creator that is all things, that 360-degree being that each carries within each. And we would thank you all once again today for calling for our presence and for our words and thoughts. We share them with you as the best that we have to give, and we are honored to share them. We walk with you on this path, but at this time, we seemingly leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. We are known to you as those of Ko, Adonai, Vasu, Varagas.
All right. And with that, I guess we'll end the stream, and we leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai.
Adonai.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Yeah.
Good night.